What's going on, guys? VZ Duels here, back with another updated Tri-Sprite deck profile. As you can tell from the history of my channel, that I've been adamantly playing this deck for months at this point and past the ban list. And this deck is certainly alive and kicking for sure for the variants of Sprite that are very much running and alive. So I'll go ahead and just start with the main deck. It's not too different from most builds right now with the triple blue, triple jet. I do the 2 red and the carrot. The reason I definitely do the red is as an out to Nibiru, or as like a protection from Nibiru. And then just to have almost like a guarantee that I'm going to have a Sprite name in hand. Just to have more names, it would be nice to run Pixies, but honestly, red is just the better choice right now. Just again, for that little bit of reassurance, because it's much more useful than Pixies is, especially when you're kind of pushing it on your opponent. So then, for the Tribergate package, 3 kits, 2 Karaz, and 2 Nerval. At first I was running the Fractal, but then I took some inspiration from Dylan Fox's list, and I did come to realize that especially with Cachetira running around, it's just much better to just have the level 2s. I used to do, I think it was these ratios right here, because it was more or less like a guarantee that I didn't really want to see this in hand. This was more of like a extension play, but after testing this out, it really helps to have a second level 2 name out of deck to use and even to start with. So ultimately this does have to stay at 2. This being at 3 is just basically to, again, I used to do Fractal with just 2 of these, so that way I just use this, dump this, facilitate that. But ultimately, this is just better as a regular normal summon anyways. So I did actually enjoy and have been enjoying those ratios for Tribergate. This one's a little bit different. 3 Beaver, 1 Angler. The only reason I do this is for the sake of deck space and keeping everything at 40. I would like to bump it up to the second one, but then I'd be going into 41. I could remove a certain card I'll cover later, and I'll say which one it is, but I feel it's a little bit more detrimental in covering what this deck's weakness is and to help this deck push through. The fact that this is a one of, I know it's going to suck seeing it in hand, but I honestly would rather chance this being drawn into a hand than me having this as like a late game draw or something. Sprite Spring sends it, Foolish Burial sends it. More often than not, again, according to ratios, you're not going to see this card in hand. I want to keep it that way. So that's why I only play the 1. Hand Trap. Only Ash Blossom. I don't feel like Nibiru is something to really be playing this format. I think everybody's just too anticipating of it, so they play around it. So Ash Blossom, I feel like this is minimally impactful for a lot of decks. The only exception being Branded, just because it stops a fusion and stops them from facilitating plays. I mean, this card does come up in its own ways against other Sprite decks as well. I mean, you do this against Gigantic, you do pretty good damage to them. But especially against Cachetira, this is just such a minimally impactful card. At a point, I was thinking of taking them out entirely, but again, Branded Despia matchup, you kind of need it. At a point, I did run Lancias, because that can also interrupt them, but once they get their fusion to succeed, that's when they just kind of snowball with their plays. So then that's it for monsters. Moving on to spells. 3 starter, just a given, just to facilitate everything. Smashers to remove stuff. Then you have Foolish Burial, another card to facilitate. So if you don't draw into, Kit or Kit and something else, either one of these will just start facilitating anything and everything for you. So then this is the part where it kind of deviates a little bit from other lists. I do main deck 3 Book of Eclipse. I main deck the 3 solely because of its quick play status. Just as I was maining droplets prior to Tearlament being a big deck, the quick play aspect was always what I liked, just because, especially when you're game 1, not knowing if you're actually going to go first or second, I feel it's a safer bet to just have a quick play, 1 card answer that really helps against most meta decks. In the case of like a format or 2 ago, the droplet seemed to me to be optimized and more useful just because it's quick play. So that's why I do play 3 of that, but I do also play 2 Dark Hole just for the sake of having a board clear. This is very meta relevant right now. This completely destroys Cachetira boards. This completely decimates any sort of branded setup that your opponent would have against you by removing everything. It makes their branded red dead. I mean, this is the best going second card in a game 1 for like pretty much any and all decks except for maybe like Labyrinth. Even Trap Tricks this is really good in, because you get to kill off the Rafflesia and whatever else that they've summoned for their end board. So then traps, the 1 Revolt. It would be nice to run 2 of these, but in a way, and I will show you later what I mean by this, in a way, you can actually play 2 of this in my build. 3 Imperm, and then 3 Evenly. At first, I didn't really think that this was a good card, just because then your opponent gets to pick what card they get to leave behind, and for Cachetira, just leave a Rise Heart. But this card is just such a meta call right now, what with Labyrinth, Ninjas, and Trap Tricks. It's just such an all-purpose board clear that when you're going against these established decks that don't have a negate for stuff like this, you just have to play this to clear those boards out. I would have liked to side deck this, and that's how I initially started this build. But after seeing how many people were playing Evenly as their main, it's just something that I had to kind of bandwagon on, and after playing it like that, yeah, I really got to see its effectiveness. Which is why at a point I started before this deck profile, I was trying to main deck Lancia, just for the sake of Cachetira, branded banishing for the Albion to fusion summon, extend off of that. And then for the odd chance of Evenly, I think I have had that happen once where somebody evenly me and then I Lancia'd, so I was perfectly fine. But either way, so moving on to extra deck. Again, kind of standard. So for Tri-brigades, you got the Ferrigite, Bearbrum, 2 Omen. It would be nice to run 2 of Ferrigite, but extra deck space is tight, and with Cachetira running around, you kind of have to focus more on other cards like Omen, and plus for late game, Omen is easily the better choice, because you're going to have played through everything to really make summoning these less optimalistic. Running multiple copies of this is mainly for decks that are solely focused on the Tri-Beast aspect of Tri-brigade variants, so like Bird Up and stuff like that. Regular Link monsters, IP, Double Dragon Lords, early. And then here's the one that was, again, inspired off of David Fox. This one's just, of course, if your opponent goes into their main phase 2, they don't have their battle phase, this is nice protection. However, I do play as an alternative option is Nightmare Griffin. Today was my first locals where I was testing this out because I honestly feel like when you end with IP early, that you need to have other options other than Appaloosa just in case there are different situations that call for something much better. And that's the one problem I always saw with Appaloosa. I was doing Mech Knight Crusadia for a while because, hey, look, Cachetira can't target it. Then the problem is that then you get into an endless grind game where they will outgrind you because you've done nothing to them. Griffin helps you to shut off Branded Despia completely. It helps you to turn off um, decks like Cachetira. You can have them spam their boards and everything, and they can't use any of their monster effects while you have all of your stuff live because you can just put link arrows everywhere while blocking theirs. But this was a tech choice that I've chosen to use. It's still a little bit of a test. I took this to locals. I played it for the first time with all this ratios and combos and everything. So it's still something I'm testing out. I did misplay with it in my last game. So it was a 5-round tournament. First round was Trap Trick. Second was I forgot the second one. The third one was Sky Striker. The fourth one was Branded Despia. Oh yeah, second one was Cachetira. Um, fourth one was Branded Despia, Bestial, and the last one was Cachetira. The Cachetira was what I lost. I didn't take advantage of Griffin being where it stops all their effects from activating. I was supposed to do a Gigantic and just clear board and just get rid of this, but I was too overprotective of this, so just this is a really good card and it does a lot, but use it correctly and learn that because it is actually a pretty good card that was really holding off the Cachetira deck I was facing up against. And then the last link is, of course, Sprite Spring. You need this. People are running two. I just run the one because Gigantic basically facilitates the exact same plays that this does ultimately. Especially if you use a Starter or Foolish Burial, or you just have another monster. And if you still have your Beaver that you like sent off of Foolish Burial or something, you normal summon Beaver, you special summon blue, special red, go into Gigantic, special kit. That's one of the plays I usually do if Cashier decides to hit this. I know David Fox said that this was like a mandatory card. I personally don't see it that way. It's good, it helps you start, but this card I think is ultimately the more important card, which is why I guarantee run this at 2. Guarantee run this at 2 for 2 reasons. One, it's the main monster that helps you get into your Sprite plays or your Tribergate plays. And B, because of Cachetira banishing, you want to make this less optimized for them to target. And ultimately, how I see this deck is this is actually the better card for them to hit, especially if they're going first against the Sprite deck. Mainly because all Sprite really needs to do is either get red out with something, with like a link monster, or go into this and go into Zeus. Like that's pretty much the most optimized way to handle them. But if you already use the Gigantic for the Zeus, you're more than likely not going to have a way to extend past that and go into any other plays. I know I'm kind of giving counter advice for this deck, but I really think the Cachetira players are hitting this card because they're perceiving this as the all-important card. I see this one as being it right here. I played Downward just to give a 2-mat Zeus. I had Cachetira's players knocking this out. It's just kind of bait for that, but either which way, it's still a useful card. I wish there was other options. I did want to play another rank too, but with Downward, it just makes that 2-mat Zeus very important. You play that against Cachetira, and you can kind of mess them up, catch them off guard, break them before they can break through your boards. And that was my misplay for the day. I was supposed to just sit on that. It would have held the board down very, very well for me, and I would have had other cards, but I misplayed it, overextended the wrong way, and messed myself up entirely. So Zeus is godsend. Try and make sure you get as many materials under it as you can. Side deck, the one Pankratops, because this is a amazing way to just break through anything. This is amazing for, as I've said to other people, branded Bestial, Despia. Great against that deck. Great against Cachetira. Great against anything really, any sort of board. This is actually pretty useful against Labyrinth too, because then you could just special summon it, bait out a trap, tribute it, pop another one, bait that one out. That it's just, you kind of have to play it if you're gonna be going into game 2 or 3 going second. 2 Drone Lock. I wish I could play 3 because this card is absolutely amazing, especially against Cachetira today. My second round Cachetira opponent, they dropped 2 Ash on me in game 1. They dropped 2 Ash on me in game 2. Game 3, I finally got to return the favor and drop a Drone Lock and just stop them completely on their turn. So it was kind of funny. But this is a very good card for very search-reliant decks and decks that rely, so heavily on searching, adding, drawing, etc. So definitely a must-have. I was putting in Lancias before this, but now after changing out Draw and Lock yesterday, this is easily the better card. Aside from Control, this is a board-breaking format, so on top of the Evenlies in the main deck, you have the Harpy's Feather Dust and Lightning Storms, as well as the third Dark Hole. This is, of course, for all the spell trap heavy decks, decks like Labyrinth and all. And then this is, of course, for decks like Cachetira, where you just need to get rid of all their monsters as soon as you can, so that your plays can go through just fine. Traps to control. So this is your going first game 2 and 3s. Triple Beaver, because, against Despia, it's like an auto, branded Despia, it's like an auto win. Against Sword Soul, it's kind of an auto win. It definitely is. Against Cachetira, it can hinder them from establishing a nice board against you. It is pretty crucial. To Eradicator, I've been in limbo for running anti-spell. I really like that card. It is very powerful, especially against decks like Branded and Cachetira. When you play that, they just get their stuff all locked out. They can't do anything. Against Runic, it shuts their deck down entirely. But ultimately, the problem I always saw was if they chain something like Twin Twisters, okay, then it's gone. If they remove it, they're good to go. But the only problem, especially, is my matchup with Labyrinth was always a problem for me. So Anti-Spell wasn't going to do that. Trying to fit in Royal Decree in a small side deck of 15 cards wasn't going to work that way either. I needed to have other options for more played decks. So ultimately, that's where Eradicator came in the picture, just to act as both of them. So if I play against, like, the Skystriker player that I played against today, play against Skystriker, Runic, Flandrease, any spell heavy deck, play this card just so that you can get rid of all the spells. Very good card. It did actually perform for me today. You just simply, to do this, all you do is have a Gigantic with a link under it. So like Sprint, it'll usually be Sprint. Or, because this deck ends with Revolt, you Revolt into Omen and then use this on Omen. And there you go. So this is a very good card. It's very easy to get to Omen and Gigantic. So accessing this card's good. Why I only run it at 2 is because the other card that I run is Trap Trick to make this consistent as well. After my round 5, I'm kind of debating on cutting this down to 2. So it'll be 2, 2, and then this will be my third for either one. I'm considering that highly, but as far as matchups like branded, having a fourth way to access this card is pretty ideal. And then if I get 1 and 1, then I have access to this, and then I could shut off spells or something. Um, Other than that, random 2 tech. This one is just kind of like a last minute thing that I decided to do, and it helped with my locals yesterday against some random decks. But this card shuts down like branded Despia entirely. Their entire destructive power comes from their level 8 monsters and high level monsters. You play this, they can't do anything about it. They are completely shut down for that. You can just make all of your plays around them and just completely outgrind them because they will not be able to beat over anything. They have to get out an Alibur, which is going to be practically impossible. They can try to get as many walls as they can out, but you'll just consistently keep banishing everything. So this card is like a shutdown for decks like Branded Despia. Can really hinder Cachetira. Use this in tandem with Griffin against Cachetira. They can't do anything. They can extra deck summon into a XYZ, but then they'll have to have a link arrow point to them in order for them to activate their effects. Sure, they'll be able to attack through, but then at that point, that's the choke point that you can use things like Omen to banish or Double Dragon Lords to bounce. So, again, this card's interesting. It does actually perform pretty nicely. I played yesterday, Friday, at my locals. I faced a random Blackwing deck. This completely he couldn't do anything. He could have OTK'd me. This single card was what completely stopped him from getting a free win off on me. But I would recommend this card. I would like to run this at 3, but there's just no space. If I were to cut out the D barrier time rolls, I would just put in Red Resonator. So that way I would do 2 D barrier, 2 Eradicator, 1 Trap Trick, 1 Red Res. Maybe do a third of this. But for now, gonna keep testing it. Griffin's still kind of like a flex spot, something I'm testing out, something that seems pretty potentially nice. It can recycle your Revolt if you special summon it in Pit Knight's column. You can get a co-link draw off of it, which is helpful. It's actually a pretty good card, and if I played correctly today, I feel like it could have actually been the very card that made me outplay my opponent, but I have to still test with it more. But it certainly is an idea for anybody that's interested in this deck. I've had a lot of people at locals asking me about this deck, what I think about it, why is it that I'm playing this variant, and I mean, this deck performs. It's consistent. It's fun to play. It's challenging. It's definitely challenging. But most importantly, it performs. So it keeps up with the meta. It just does everything it needs to do. Again, if Cachetira wasn't in the format, this extra deck would look a lot nicer. You have things like Rugal and all that to really facilitate Omen. But for the time being, all this stuff just works out perfectly fine for me. This deck surprisingly can grind very well with all the stuff that I'm playing with right now against the matchups that I'm running into. And as you can tell, Cachetira, Branded Despia, meta-relevant decks, I'm keeping up with them just fine. So, hopefully you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys try out this deck too. I know a lot of people are interested in Sprite variants. Definitely take a look at Tribergate. It's not more expensive than Live Twin or any other variant. If you're looking for a deck that's going to challenge your mind and kind of push you to learn the game, learn combos, this is the one to do it. This is the one that's fun to play. I highly recommend it. This is VZ Duel signing off. Thanks for watching.